Busy day for the Cleveland Guardians. 5 new players on the 40-man roster, 2 trades, and some hardware brought home, all to get into on today's episode of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Guardians. Thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. I am Jeff Ellis, the host of Locked On Guardians, and before this, I was a lead draft and prospect analyst at Scout 24/7 and many a Cleveland sports blog. Justin, give him your background.
I have been at so many places I can't name them all. It would be unfair for me to leave somebody out who's still doing great work, despite what I left behind. Currently managing editor at Guardians Baseball Insider and freelancing for the Lorain Morning Journal and the Willoughby News Herald. That about covers it.
I wanted to think about like who I was going to slam there and make a bad joke about, which one of our friends who runs the site, but I decided to be kind and move on. Listen, it was viewed as a maybe to some people minor upset that Tito Francona won Manager of the Year. We were discussing this off air. I don't think it is. A, media loves Tito. B, it's probably viewed as the last shot he gets at this award. I think this was a farewell tour. He's got 3 of them in Cleveland. Does anyone care? I've been asking this question multiple times on this show. People are still mad about Stephen Kwan, and that's silly. But does anyone care about Manager of the Year? It's great. Tito won. It's some more hardware. I don't have a big feel. He was definitely deserving to be in that conversation. It is hard to quantify the value of a manager because it feels like 70 to 80% of what they do you have no ability to quantify. So congrats to Tito. 3 is a great thing. His whole run here has been fantastic. But yeah, that's my final thoughts. Who actually cares about Manager of the Year?
Yeah, it's definitely not. I mean, this is one of those awards that has no quantification. You can't really make any arguments other than getting to know the managers and understanding their situations. Like we said, everybody knows this by now. It's not like any breaking news. These awards are always won by the team that outperforms expectations. I know the expectations for the Orioles were probably low. The expectations for the Mariners were not quite as low. They were expectations, and those things certainly changed as the season went on too, because the Mariners made a big move and they improved their team. Yeah, I will say the only thing is the Orioles didn't make the playoffs. Is that something that has to to be part of the award? I don't really know, but I'm with you. I think definitely factors in heavily how the relationships Tito has with the media and how long he's been around and the success level. And, that could have been nobody knew if he was coming back next year, set him out with that. I mean, obviously if they weren't good, they weren't going to vote for him, but yeah, it's just one of those awards that you're like, okay, like somebody won and some people finished in second or third. It's not like, I don't know, is there anything in Tito's contract that gives him more money if he wins the award? Maybe. But even if it is, does it really matter at the end of the day? Probably not. I don't think anybody internally is slighted by any of this. You know what I mean? There's nobody working for these teams is losing sleep tonight because of their manager did or didn't win this award. You know what I mean?
100%. I think that's really all we need to say. It's like I said, it's not the driver. I think most people are probably here tonight because of trade number 2, actually, of the day. Nolan Jones for Juan Brito. Here's my view. I see a lot of people talking. Well, it's Nolan Jones is blocked. Well, considering this, there's more middle infielders on this 40-man than any other position. Brito's even more blocked. This is 2 teams trading for what they desire. Colorado is always trying to add more power. Cleveland is trying to add more contact skills, and both trading away the deficit that their system has. Colorado needs more contact skills and on-base guys. Cleveland seems on paper to need more power, but it was teams trading for their approach. Yeah, I'll go to you, and then I can give some further, analysis as we debate this the big trade of the day.
Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of hot takes on the trade, to be honest with you. I think it's pretty obvious that Cleveland preferred what Oscar Gonzalez gave them over what Nolan Jones gave them. They didn't call him back up at the end of the season when they had a chance to. He was on the postseason roster. They called up Will Brennan instead of calling Nolan Jones back up in order to add a left-handed bat. They were probably trying to get a look at Brennan, and Brennan played well in his stretches in the end of the regular season. So I think it just came down to they had other options in the organization they clearly prefer. They clearly prefer right now Oscar Gonzalez. They clearly prefer Will Brennan. They might even prefer George Valera. That's still to be determined. But at the end of the day, they had to. It would have been very hard to see. We've talked about this. I think it would have been very unlikely that all these guys came to AAA next year that weren't on the roster anyway, right? So they had to make a move one way or the other, and clearly this is the one they didn't feel as strongly about going forward at this point. So they made a move for what they thought they could get from him, and that's what they ended up with.
Yeah, I think, Oscar Gonzalez versus Nolan Jones, I think that just comes down to handedness. Like, I don't know how much it goes beyond, but I think that a degree of that is the handedness matters because this team has no handedness. And I mean, both are adventures in defense, and both have profiles. Maybe don't profile traditionally, but my general view, I was looking at Brito, is we've got 1 year of data. It's very unusual for a player like him to be on a 40-man at this point in time. He's 20. He's only played in low A. I watched about 20 minutes of video on him. He has a little bit of a late move. Like when the pitcher goes to pitch, he crouches. So he has that. There's some videos where he does it very dramatically. I don't know if it makes it harder for the pitcher to find the zone, if that's part of the reason his walk rate was so high, if it does something that messes with, perception versus what it becomes. I always get nervous with any type of moving part because sometimes that becomes an issue. So that's one of those things. It's not huge. When I first saw it, like I said, it was this dramatic zoom back. And I was like, that's going to be an issue. But it looked like he has worked on toning down the moving parts of it. So I don't think that'll be as big of a deal. Fresno is a bandbox. I think you're probably at I think the best case outcome is average pop. I think you're hoping plus hit average pop. I know Justin likes him a bit more, but I think it's maybe because he looks a little, the profile might be a little Ronnie Belliard-esque as a second baseman. If it works, here's the thing. They could look very smart and very savvy. He has a good approach. He has good contact skills, just a little bit of uppercut to the swing. He stole 17 bases, even though he is a below average runner. So there's obviously some intelligence and smarts to it. The high walk versus low walk, again, he's a low A guy. This is one of those trades where, hey, maybe they're going to look very savvy in a few years. Maybe they're going to look very dumb. You don't base anything on pipeline, but you do have to point out that Nolan Jones was 7th in the system and Brito was 30th in Colorado's barren wasteland of a system. But he would have likely moved up because he had that year in A-ball. He's an interesting player. He fits the Guardians approach, right? He's contact. He is a good eye at the plate. There's some Stephen Kwan to the profile. But again, those are all the high-end outcomes. Mostly this is Jones wasn't going to make this team, and they found a guy that they think could be a diamond in the rough. Yeah,
maybe. I'm going to say, I looked at the park factors for Fresno. That's where he played his home games last year. The park factors weren't as bad as you might think. 88 for home runs, which is below average. So
I saw him at 125 at Baseball Americas going into the year.
Right. This is after this. I think this is after the season. This is as of October 10th of this year. So home runs this year, 88 in a park factor. Obviously, 100 is average and 120 is above average. Runs overall 92. So a little bit. So that ballpark didn't play. Played slightly below average this year in terms of offense. Now I'm not sure.
Weird they would have a 40 point because it was 125 in 2021. So I don't know if that's is that something where it's player performance or are you using Baseball America as well, or another?
Yeah. It's Baseball America's Park Factors for 2022. This came out October 10th this year.
It's weird that it shifts that much.
88 result of his Park Factor, where 100 is average and 120 signifies that the outcome is 20% more frequent in home games than road games. Conversely, a Park Factor of 80 indicates that the outcome is 20% less in home games. And Fresno, like I said, was 88 has an 88 Park Factor in home games, and a 92 in runs. So that's below the 100 mark. So it's below average at home versus the rest of the league. So I wonder if that's a case of, like, what happens with Colorado, where they struggle on the road because they have to get used to differences, and then at home they end up being better once they get used to it. I don't know. But the Park Factors are pretty good. I mean, Rancho Cucamonga, where the Dodgers play, had a home run Park Factor of 141, so that's obviously super high, and they had a 102 Park Factor in runs. Inland Empire was 109 and 75, so I don't know. I'm not sure. But the Park Factors this year say that not really that much of an issue for Brito in terms of his performance. He was, low A technically. He was 20 years old at low A, so he was about a year younger than the rest of his peers. That's still pretty solid. It's not otherworldly, but it's pretty good. I don't know. I think a lot of this is too early to judge the trade. I think what it comes down to, is that Jones had traits that they no longer valued. Remember, Jones was also drafted at a time by a different scouting director. Then they've kind of changed philosophy since then. That 2016 draft was obviously great because it produced a ton of pitching. It produced Benson and Jones, which was good. Some other guys, but those kind of traits are no longer what they value, what they're developing. And like you said, Brito is more of a contact hitter, and I do think there's parts of the swing I absolutely like. I haven't had as much time as you had to dig in on the video. I will later this week. I probably won't have a substantial answer for anybody until early next week. But there's some things to like there, and it comes down to they see some tools and some skills that Brito brings they like, and ones they don't in Jones anymore. They don't value as much anymore. And Jones didn't have a home here. It wasn't going to be first base. Probably not the outfield. He strikes out more than Oscar Gonzalez for whatever deficiencies Gonzalez has offensively. We can safely say that he strikes out a lot less than Jones just because of the sheer contact rate. And like you said, handiness plays a role. Yeah. And the other thing I think we should dispel too is there's a lot of people out there saying, "Oh, that's all they could get for Nolan Jones." Really? Do you think that, or they settled, they should have traded him for more? Cleveland was probably talking to multiple teams this week about Nolan Jones, if this is the case. They've probably been thinking for a while about his future on this team. So chances are they didn't get one offer and just took it for Nolan Jones. Chances are they had conversations with multiple teams about Nolan Jones. And I think, I think you can look at a guy like Juan Brito and suggest that this is a guy Cleveland target. I think this is a specific target, that this is a guy maybe they just have a conversations with the Rockies. Maybe the Rockies decided they like Nolan Jones, and this is the guy on the list that Cleveland liked the most. But this kind of feels like Cleveland likes this guy specifically. Nolan Jones doesn't have a home. It might have been a trade of where both teams would benefit. So it just feels kind of direct. But trust me, they didn't just trade Nolan Jones without knowing what he could get elsewhere, and they didn't just trade for this Brito guy without knowing, how else he's felt about around the league as well.
Yeah, I was kind of interested while we were talking. I looked. Of his 11 home runs, 8 were at home. He only hit 3 on the road in the rest of the California League. So, however it is set up, it definitely seemed to benefit him, as he had a rather massive split between those two. It is like a pretty pro-dimension park. I'll say that. It's not like there's some gimmick that I really saw. But, he's low A. You take everything in low A with a grain of salt. That's the end of the day thing. Everything in low A is a grain of salt. Great years, bad years. I mean, go look what Bobby Bradley did in low A when people were telling me he was going to win a Triple Crown. It's just the truth of the matter. You can't really take too much from Brito, except for he is not a plus athlete, which is going to make it hard. He had a few nice plays. I was watching defensively, but he played some shortstop. That's not going to stick. Like every report talks about him being well below average runner. So that also makes you a little bit worried that if he thickens up, which he could do, and then maybe that power could come a little bit better, about positional. And then like watching the video, I would hazard about 70% the ball was on the ground. There is, like I said, there is some uppercut in there, and he obviously, by the reports, he hit a ton of doubles, he hit for power, but it looked like, I didn't look at his stats, which probably would be the smarter thing to do. But in the small cross section of ones I saw, it was, it's a swing for contact. This isn't a guy who you necessarily think is going to do much more than be. I mean, this is saying his ground ball percentage was 37%, fly ball 42. So about equal in those areas. But yeah, he is all pull. So we know they like pull hitters. He's nearly 50% pull hitter. So he just fit them profile. I think that's, we've both mentioned it. He fits a profile, and they like players that are different. Everyone was sitting there complaining about the Kluber deal. I'm not saying that this is going to turn into Class A, but I mean, everyone's like, all we got was a reliever for Kluber. So you always have to wait and see. Like, that's what I can say. I don't love it. I'll put on record. Like, I've been honest. Like, I love the Clevenger deal. Most people didn't like that. I got that right. I hated the Lindor deal. That one I missed. So I'm just going to say right now, I don't like it, just because it feels like a little bit of redundancy. And I feel like it's a very thin margin to success because of the athletic profile. Justin and I disagree, which is great because it doesn't happen very often. I think you're a little bit higher overall on him. I'm not saying you're like, okay, he's a top 10 prospect, but I think whereas I'm sitting there looking at him as probably not maybe a back of the top 20, or back of the top 30, or like around 30, even for consideration. I think you see a little bit more upside or ceiling. But again, I think we're both saying, who knows?
Yeah, too soon to tell. Like I said, I haven't seen enough on him to really espouse an opinion. And, just a little bit I do see. I definitely do. I think there's something interesting about him. I definitely want to see more. I definitely think that, there are traits there that I think that Cleveland can do stuff with. You know what I mean? Like we've seen over the last couple of years how they've handled those profiles, and I think there is something they can at least. There's some things they can try to shape and work with. Like, Saris in The Athletic had that great tweet. He said that if Brito hasn't gone through any like weighted bat training, that was something that helped Stephen Kwan, a lot of weighted bat training. If they can do that with Brito, with his contact skills, his ability to pull the ball, get the ball in the air, you might have something there. It just seems like one of those things where you're like, okay, we like the outline. Let's try to tighten the edges and kind of mold it to how we like it. Things they can work with.
So yeah, just for those who missed it, the full tweet from Saris is Nolan Jones for Juan Brito is low-key fascinating. Jones strikes out too much, especially for the Guardians, which again, that kind of gives you behind the scenes look there. But batted ball stats, excellent in small sample. Brito makes contact and has patience, but pulls everything without power you normally see with that approach. Trade to remember. I have gone for Jones, but if Brito has never gone on a weighted bat program, his contact rate offers much more upside. So that's like that full one if you're curious about that. And, Saros does more in-depth stuff with such things as anyone. So definitely stands out. It's an interesting trade. The best part about this trade is still Chris, I'm going to get his name wrong, Austin Maker from the Lorraine, who tweeted it out about 20 minutes before I think he was allowed to announce it. If you saw that initial one, his first tweet about all the moves of the day included it, and then it got deleted, and then he said mistype, and then it came back, and he announced it officially. So it was humorous to watch it unfold. It was also kind of nice to see someone not rush to scream first, which is so rare in media today. So I wanted to butcher his name, get all of his data wrong, not give him credit in the correct way, but also say, like, I appreciate any person who's just like, oh, I was supposed to be quiet about this. Hold on a second. But we're going to take our first break here at nearly where we should be taking a third break typically, and then come back. We got another trade and 3 more names to talk about internally, all on today's Locked On Guardians. So our first monster today are our good friends over at Simply Safe. And if you've heard me talk about Simply Safe, my house had this system before I bought it. All the materials are still here. If I look around the recording basement, there's some down here. The former owner went all in on Simply Safe. He has everything set up. And in the time I bought the house, they have all stayed sturdy. They've stayed together. I have young children who throw things up into the rafters, hit these things all the time. Nothing breaks, nothing comes down. It is well-made equipment. If you've also listened to the show, you know I really use U.S. News and World Reports as a lamppost, a guidepost on big purchase items, things that are expensive. And they rated Simply Safe the top home security system of 2022 and 2021. And 2020. That's what you're getting here. You're getting consistent success. This is the Cleveland Guardians of home security. Consistently good, consistently productive, high contact rates. And I hear Nolan Jones is no longer working for them. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real so you can get priority police response. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I've recommended. Get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/LockedOnMLB. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That's simplysafe.com/LockedOnMLB. There's no safe like Simply Safe. And okay, trade number 2 to discuss. I liked this one. Carlos Vargas for Ross Carver. I guess I'll lead off again. Carlos Vargas had maybe the best slider in the minors, but his fastball was almost unusable at points. It's high velocity, but I don't think he could ever put it anywhere. So I don't know, it's clear relief is going to be the role. I had so many people tweeting about how this guy was like Clase A. It's like, no. See, Clase A has an 80 grade fastball. With the command issues, Vargas had like a 40 grade fastball because if you can't put it somewhere, it doesn't matter how fast it is. Slider is a legitimate weapon, but the hype I saw today on him was unbelievable. People were more upset about Vargas than Jones. I don't know about you, but I don't even think those two players are close in terms of value.
No, I mean, Carlos Vargas, I liked Carlos Vargas. I will say I've been hot on the trail for him for a little bit as far as wanting to see him as a reliever, even when he was in Mahoning Valley, because he never really had a changeup back then. And by the time he got back from Tommy John, it didn't matter. He didn't pitch in 2020, didn't pitch in 2021 because of Tommy John, never got above short season ball until this year, coming back from Tommy John. But even so, the fastball had some, it's not just the control of the fastball, which was, like you said, 40, probably 40 grade control, maybe even. Yeah, okay. I'll say 40 grade control, which would make
I heard
30.
People putting 30s on it. So
yeah, maybe even 30. The control is not good. It hasn't been good. To be fair, he also was coming back from Tommy John and missed 2 seasons, so I think there's some.
Yeah. Even before that, it wasn't good.
Yeah, I think it was probably a 40 before. You're at least maybe projecting a 40 at best. You'll give him a little bit of a mulligan on that, but the fastball control wasn't good, and furthermore, just the shape and the movement didn't. What's the right word I'm looking for? It didn't work in missing bats. It didn't help itself in terms of missing bats. It was really more of a fastball shape that would be to induce grounders or weak contact. But just like you said, because he had such a hard time controlling it this year, it didn't really make a difference. The slider was good, without a doubt. The slider is is easily, and in a vacuum, it's a 70. I think it's a plus pitch. The problem with that is, and I saw a good article on this recently from Prospects Live.
Tieran, right?
Tieran, how the slider, doesn't get a lift from the fastball, because the fastball is so bad and so unusable on its own, it almost knocks the slider down a peg and he becomes a one-pitch pitcher. Now, and people might be saying, well, Emmanuel Clase is a one-pitch pitcher. No, he's not. Mariano Rivera might have been, but Mariano Rivera had a a 70 pitch with like 70 command. Carlos Vargas has a 70 pitch with 30 command, and it's not a pitch you can really live with on its own.
Yeah,
the
no one
cutter
lives on the slider. I mean, slider is fantastic. The Guardians love sliders, but no one's one pitching with a slider.
Right. And there's a reason that Clase got better when he started throwing the slider more, not just the cutter. You know what I mean? The days of one, there are very few one pitch pitchers in the majors, and Mariano Rivera probably was it. But Clase is neither of those guys. As much as I liked Clase, the slider probably got knocked down a peg because of the fastball issues, and it seemed like he had fallen out of favor a little bit, and that's tough to say coming off of Tommy John and everything, but he didn't get into that game he was warming up for against Minnesota. They didn't use him as an emergency arm. And furthermore, they added Tim Herron today and moved on from Vargas. So I think that tells you that Tim Herron moved ahead of Vargas in terms of relief pecking order. So no need there.
Yeah. And I personally agree with that assessment. Don't you as well?
What?
If you have to choose between Herron or Vargas.
See, I would have liked to have given Vargas one more year. I would like to have seen what would happen this year. But if you're really committed to the rest of your roster, and I would probably go Herron over Vargas. But I would like Vargas one more year, just one more mulligan to see what he looks like coming off of year 2 off of Tommy John.
Yeah, he's, like I said, he's a fascinating hype case just because, as you said, he's been so hurt. We haven't seen him above A-ball. Statistically, he has never been a dominator in spite of that great stuff, yet a lot of people were really on the hype train today. So it's fascinating just in the way that things are reported. So I guess it's, another point of media literacy of just like, don't use just one source, look at multiple places, get a lot of data. And, I've been hearing outlandish things about Carlos Vargas for years. So I'm just going to state that. And take some time. Don't just trust this show. Like, get multiple sources. That's how you're going to do better with baseball in general. Ross Carver is a nice return, though, for multiple reasons. He's 2 years away. He is 2 years away from being eligible for the Rule 5 draft. It gives him some time to think. He's got a plus curveball. So you're getting a guy with a plus curveball. The fastball velocity was up this year, low 90s, like touching mid 90s. And, he if you look at the numbers in Double-A, there is no doubt that that park in, is it Amarillo? Wherever he was, that Double-A park is one of the worst in baseball. So, the numbers were bad when he got the Double-A for all of 36 innings this year. But he was pitching in a no man's land. And there's a lot of people who really like him and who kind of looked at this as, he's maybe a reliever with the fastball curveball, but when you're sending him to Cleveland with what they can do, if they can help him with that third pitch, he could maybe be a starter. I liked him at Dallas Baptist. I had liked some of his college stats. So when that happened, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I thought Cleveland might even have liked him out of college at the time. I liked this trade overall. You're clearing up that space and you're getting someone who, he was a 4-year college guy, reliever at Dallas Baptist, but who, it was at Amarillo that, has some interesting performance numbers this year and a chance to do more. And again, 2 years before you got to make any decisions on him.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit older. I guess not really. He was probably about average age for high A, and then didn't really pitch he pitched 36 innings at Double-A, so we're not going to take a ton away from that. Like you said, the ballpark there. I didn't look at the park factors for that one yet. I don't really have a strong opinion on Carver. Not a ton of video floating around on Twitter. I haven't had time to dig in on any other video besides that. I did see a couple good curveballs, so it looks like he has a very good curveball. Let's see, Double-A park factors from the one I had just pulled up. That is not Reno, right? No, that's
no, Amarillo. He's at Amarillo.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, the park factors this year. were pretty rough. A 165 for home runs and a 142 for runs overall in that ballpark. So
I don't know if anyone is worse than 165. I got to be honest. That's going to be. I mean, Vegas is 153, and that's rather notorious.
Lake County was 161 this year in terms of home runs.
Charlotte was 169. I'm looking here for AAA. I feel like Reading is the one to go look up. That park is a disaster. Yeah. Oh, it's only a 100 this year. I've always heard terrible things about Reading. But yeah, I think that 165 made it the worst park for home runs in baseball. So, no, Spokane also had a 165. So yeah, there's some high ones.
It's bad. It's bad. Yeah, it was a tough park to pitch in. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, not like Vargas had a ton of value. Just a team that maybe liked him a little bit and thought. I mean, we've talked about a couple times in the show. You've kept bringing it up that Arizona needs relief help, and I'm sure this isn't the only relief help they're going to target. But if they feel like he can be an impact in the bullpen, then good for them, and hopefully he does as well. But it's a guy that can help him now, and Cleveland could wait and see on Carver for a couple of years here, and had good numbers.
He's a reliever in college, so you're also doing that conversion on him right now from reliever to starter, and the chance for a
lot of people liked him in high A. So yeah, definitely hit a snag in Double A. So starts next season the Double A rotation. You see where it goes from there, and this is a trade where I don't think, if Cleveland, we're not going to judge winners and losers on November 15th of a offseason 40-man trade, but this is a trade that I feel like is going to have some fairly low consequence. As much as I have always been, anybody will say who's ever cared about anything, I think for whatever reason, I've always liked Vargas and I like the potential, but I think I've always tried to acknowledge that while Vargas has the potential, it is a very high bust rate for a player like him, and it's pretty much all ceiling and no floor. The floor is nothing good for Vargas. Yeah, the floor is lava for Vargas for sure.
So yeah, I think like I said, interesting player, good trade, and more importantly, opened a 40-man spot. We got 3 players to talk about still on the 40-man, but first, we're going to take another break from a word from our sponsors here. And that fantastic sponsor is, as I say, a Rushmore sponsor that is one of our fantastic friends over at Bet Online. I was trying to go see, let's talk some baseball odds. If you're curious for next year, after their most updated odds, after what went down today, Tyler Anderson leaving the Dodgers. Is that about Martin Perez signing his qualifying offer? I think that's about as big as it got. Dodgers are still the World Series favorites for next year at 575. Astros, Braves, Yankees, Blue Jays. Cleveland is still all the way down here at plus 3,300. And your longest bet, Pirates, Nationals, Athletics. Those are your 3 bottom teams. If you had to pick one of those 3 bottom to win the World Series, are you going Oakland, Pittsburgh, or Washington?
Pass. Can I pass?
I'd probably go Pittsburgh just because I think they're going to actually promote some guys. Well, the other ones are just selling at all times. MLB free agency. How about this? You want to do some odds? Aaron Judge, you cannot bet on him for the Yankees, but Giants, Dodgers, Mets, top 3 for Aaron Judge. Guardians do get odds at, again, plus 3,300 on Aaron Judge. Carlos Correa's next team, Cubs, Twins, Giants. Cubs, significant advantage. That's apparently, maybe there's some inside info. Dansby Swanson, if not the Braves, so again, that's your favorite, then Giants, Cubs, Phillies. Jacob deGrom, if not the Mets, then Rangers, Braves, and Dodgers, and then the Guardians. I'm kidding. No, they're not 4th on that list. So, it's always fun to go see where the Guardians appear. They only appear on the Aaron Judge list, which is kind of comical in its own way. But go check out our good friends over at Bet Online today. If you want to get in the game, go to Bet Online. 3 ads, and I take a moment, give Justin some praise. These were his top 3. When we did our top 3s, this is my 1, 2, and 4, but this was Justin's 1, 2, and 3. And also, he doesn't like it when I give him praise. At least there's no terrible face today. I believe you also at one point in time I don't know if it was on air or off air, talked about how Nolan Jones to Colorado would be fun and make sense. I feel like we had that discussion. I don't know what we were discussing would come the other way, but I feel like that came up in one of our talks. So multiple kudos here. On hell, I keep on calling that. Angel Martinez, clearly the best player by a mile. They had to add him or he'd have been the first pick in the draft. We've talked about him ad nauseum. Listen, he was one of the youngest players at his level and consistently performed. He's a top 10 prospect in the system, and we'll move on. Cantillo, we debated. How happy are you with Cantillo being here right now in spite of only playing half a year in the last, 3?
Yeah, half a year out of 2020, 21. Yeah, out of the last 3 seasons. That's crazy, but definitely another guy I think would have been selected. That's the leaps and gains he made this season. I think would have been easy for a team to stash from the bullpen for a year, see how he ends up translating to the big league level. Maybe send him back down to AAA next year after he's at the 90 days in the active roster, and then or what? Can they send him down? If you have a guy on your active roster for 90 days this season, can you send him back down for the 90 days? Or does it have to be up for the whole season?
I don't think you can send him down. I think that's why it helps when a guy has an injury, because then it shortens the season. Like when we talk about...
Well, but he has to be on the active roster for 90 days. That's the rule.
Yes, to keep him. So if he's not on the active roster for 90 days, then he can be offered back. But if an injury means the season starts late, then it starts late, and then you don't have to worry. But the minute you take him off your roster, I believe you have to offer that player back. So that is why it is beneficial if they're hurt, because then it shortens the overall season for that player and allows you to stash them. I agree, but I mean, teams love to carry 2 lefties. What's easier to carry than a lefty reliever?
Yeah, I think Jones. I think Cantillo would have had no problem sticking on a roster long enough to lose for the team drafting him to have control and be able to send him down after they had him on the active roster long enough. So that was I was concerned they would maybe not do it, and then they must have seen that the 60 innings were more than worth it, which I agree.
I just want to take a second and say I know Tim Herron's agency follows me on Twitter, so we'd love to have him on the show. Just throw that out there. We've been big supporters of his. Might reach out in other ways, but if they're listening, he's fascinating. What a great story. Indiana's not a strong baseball program. Let's just put that out there. Be honest, Front Street, it is not. And I pulled up my tweet from draft day from 2018, which was, no, I'm not copying and pasting this. Tim Herron has a great walk rate, but he doesn't miss any bats. And it's funny to see how all the bats he misses now. He's a big kid, starter in college, but a completely different type of pitcher now in terms of just what he's able to do. You were one of the people front and center on him for a while, so why don't you take over at this point?
Yeah, Herron, I don't know. I don't remember anything from college. I definitely was not paying attention to Tim Herron in college. I definitely have never paid attention to Indiana baseball, except for Kyle Schwarber. Is that right? Kyle Schwarber?
Yes, Schwarber was at Indiana.
Okay. Outside of Kyle Schwarber, I have not really paid attention. But yeah, he went from being a guy who was like 90 to 94 at Lake County in 20 and 21. And then this year he came back explosive as ever, getting up to 99. Slider's good. Has a cutter. I think kind of a tough arm. He was a very tall guy. Improve his control too. Not only did he, take a leap forward in terms of just stuff and velocity, but the strikeout rate moved up, the walk rate went down, and maybe there's a correlation there, right? Maybe his control isn't a ton better than it was a year ago, but the fact that he's throwing harder and the stuff is better means that guys are chasing more, and that lowers his walk rate and moves the strikeout rate. So maybe the control is still to be determined. Maybe it's still going to be on the fringes, but stuff is definitely worthy enough. I know every bullpen these days has 6 guys that throw 97 plus, but I think that's very few and far between who are left-handed and 6'7", and now Cleveland has a chance to have 2 of them. Makes a lot of sense too when you think about the fact that they designated Anthony Gose for assignment as well.
But he wasn't going to play this year.
Right, but that's what I mean. This gives them a chance to have a second lefty in the bullpen, another power arm in the bullpen at some point this season from the left side. That was something they could benefit from.
Yeah, I said, it's definitely one of those success stories for the scout who found him and for the team in general. He's, you can never have enough lefties. Do you think Miklo Jack is as good as gone? Do you think someone's going to pounce? I think he is probably the biggest name left off. I saw a lot of people talking about Ethan Hankins. I threw out a tweet. You don't have to necessarily agree with this because it's one of my burning hot takes that maybe you don't want to agree with. But I thought there was a 0% chance Hankins gets added. I didn't think that was in the cards at all. I didn't think there was any possibility of that. I saw some talk of Peyton Batenfield, and I get that because, again, a year ago, we all thought for sure. But after getting passed by Curry and Gaddis, I thought the writing was on the wall there. Nick Enright, I think maybe had a shot. I don't know if he necessarily had a shot, but I think he's got a shot to be taken. But Miklo Jack is probably the biggest name not on the roster right now. We both like Fry, but listen, he wasn't protected by the Brewers last year for a reason when they have open spots. Like there's enough flaws there that I don't know if someone jumps on him. He's not a real catcher. Like if he is a real catcher, yeah, but he's not a real catcher. He's a third string catcher for a reason.
Yeah. Miklo Jack I can see just because, like we said before, a team can see that what he did in 2021 and believe that they can get him back to that. Maybe they don't. Maybe they pass him up. I don't know. Enright's had enough success that someone should take a shot on him there. I don't know anybody. I'm not really, up on everybody else's Rule 5 situation or their 40-man situation, but, Arizona, maybe Arizona likes more Cleveland's relievers. They have a bad bullpen. The Nationals have a bad bullpen. The Pirates don't have a lefty. We were just finding this out from our Pirates, Lockdown Pirates guy. The Pirates don't even have a single lefty, so I guess that's a reason you take Tim Herron, because the Pirates would have taken Tim Herron. Relievers are the most commonly selected players, so I wouldn't be surprised to see one or two Cleveland relievers go elsewhere.
Yeah, and I didn't mention him, but we should probably talk about Andrew Miziazik, whose name I probably got wrong. The numbers were fantastic all year, like some of the best numbers in the system. And I find it interesting. We know Fangraphs has some, like Eric Longenhagen has a lot of friends in baseball. Let's just be honest about that. He gets good inside info. He was on Cleveland's must-add list, Miziazik was, by Longenhagen midseason. So I feel like there's probably some team or two in the league that might really like him. So Enright, Miziazik, and Nick M., so I don't butcher his last name again, all stand a pretty good chance. It's it's the nice thing of that bullpen becoming such a strength this year. So many guys stepping up is some interesting guys were not able to be protected, but 5 players added. I think that's more than I would have expected at the start of the day. And I understand part of that is the way the trades worked out, but not 5. It's only 4 players. My original information was wrong because they did not, Carver doesn't have to be added. So it's 4 players added. Definitely more than I would have expected, though they had that trade. How are you feeling right now? Is it at the end of the day of all this still a little surprised, happy with the way it's turning out? Anyone still who survived the executioner's axe that you're a little bit surprised by?
It's still like in the system today?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought Palacios would go. Didn't think that he would. We both think that he has a very limited role in the system, and probably didn't carry a lot of value. So maybe they just decided that rather than trade him for whatever, they kept him in the system, and they'll see what happens with him as some outfield depth and a guy they feel comfortable moving up and down as needed from AAA to the majors. And probably felt like what they got back for Nolan Jones was better for their situation going forward than it was trading Rishi Palacios, I suppose. That's probably the way I look at it. Other than that, really.
For Sean Murphy trade. That's all. I'm kidding.
Yes, of course. The Sean Murphy trade that is definitely absolutely going to happen.
Palacios for Murphy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, the Nolan Jones thing was definitely a surprise. I didn't have I probably overlooked Vargas. Probably should have had him as a fringe candidate to move. Maybe I was just more interested in seeing what he could do with another year. So, no other really surprises.
I think the ones I saw from Twitter being the most surprise reactions was I think a lot of people thought Owen Miller would also be a potential trade just because of the infield depth. But I'm I don't know. I think he's here to stay. I think, they view him
got
until they can.
options.
Yeah, and until they can get a better option for that role, he's here. And then a lot of people kind of surprised that Maley is here. They're going to keep a vet catcher on roster. Like that's what it comes down to. Until they get another vet, they're going to keep a vet. Catchers get expensive. It's a limited supply, and he's going to cost, I think, about $1 million through arbitration. So there was a chance, but right now I think it comes down to that. And I know I saw him tweeting at you about it. Tony would always at this time of year. It's for as much as your hatred of saying that we're showcasing someone is like a calling card for Tony. I feel like roster fodder is like his term. Like I don't know how many times over the years I heard Tony talk about roster fodder. You got to keep roster fodder. You got to give some guys that are easy to cut. Like that was what I saw. And he hasn't Tony doesn't hop on Twitter except for just to come on and talk about roster fodder. I hope you can find something you love as much as Tony loves roster fodder. And I'm not saying this to make fun of him, but if you've worked with Tony, like we both have for any period of time, the reason Justin's laughing is because he knows it's true. Like Tony, and it's a true statement too, but Tony does bring that up every offseason.
Yeah, it's true. And actually, to be fair, they have to tender him a contract on Friday. They have to decide whether or not they're going to. I'm sure they will, but they can't. After that, they're responsible for his contract. So if they tender him a contract, they either have to keep him on the roster and pay him, or they have to trade him. Because if they DFA him, they're still responsible for the contract if they tender him. So we'll see Friday what they do. Maybe there's another trade in the works for something else. I will say, this is probably going to be the last thing Cleveland does until after the winter meetings in terms of trades, because now anybody not protected can't be traded, and they can certainly trade, whoever for Sean Murphy that's on the 40. They can go ahead and trade or
players who aren't eligible, right?
You could trade anybody not eligible, or you could trade John Kenzie Noel and
or you can trade. You can trade you can trade anyone, but teams aren't going to want to trade for Andrew Misiazic and then turn around and lose him.
Right, exactly.
That's
those
why,
guys have less value now. Yeah.
That's why Cleveland traded JC Mejia for a player to be named later, and then when the minute it was announced there is no Rule 5 draft, it became David Fry, because there was probably a list of 3 to 4 players who they would take depending on the Rule 5, and Fry was probably the top of that group. That's just how it is. Technically you can trade for anyone, but why would you want to do a trade for someone when, Rule 5, are they keeping it first week in December? It's
December
not that
7th.
far away. Yeah. So it's, I don't even know what day it is, but I know we have 5 more days until Thanksgiving break. I can tell you that as a teacher. Yeah. So we're very close to obviously that in general. So most teams, and even though you're probably sitting there going, hey, that's a 4th piece, it doesn't matter. Teams care about every single piece. They want to get maximized on any of these things. So yeah, they're probably holding steady till then.
Roster fodder matters.
So now let's roster. This is it. We don't even have any rumors. I do want to take a moment before we go to the end of this, because at this point this has gone so long. Let's just go 50. Let's get crazy. Let's make my meeting this week about not being over. I will say thank you to everyone who's commented about enjoying the longer episode, saying see people want more, but also saying thank you to everyone. That video this week about catching, the rumor has it one, it's already our 5th greatest video of all time. So it's the off season, and you crazy folks have made that nearly 1,000 watches. So I appreciate that, but we could also use 1,000 subscribers. So if you have not subscribed, please consider doing that as well. It is just a simple thing you can do to help the channel grow. And if you are a subscriber, help a friend to sign up for November. I can't think of any way to make that go with the whole know something November that everyone's doing. No friends not subscribed. I think that's a double negative. So no, ignore that. But the whole point is, come on, we're less than 150 away. Please, please, please do what you can to help us. It would be huge for both of us here who are doing this as a secondary job, but are enjoying each other's company and the podcast very much. That is my begging component of the show. We're going to have continued great content. What other podcast is going to talk Ross Carver, Carlos Vargas, Juan Brito, Tim Herron, and Joey Cantillo for nearly an hour? Find me one. you know, that it's outside of the other. Find me a podcast that doesn't have Justin on it. That's going to do that for an hour. Let me rephrase that.
Spend an hour and a half on another podcast.
Yeah. If you want even more, go check out. Go ahead. Tell them where to find your other podcast. Because hey, if they're listening to this much, they might want. If they want more, let's send them to more. That's also you.
Yeah, if you are a glutton for punishment, Guardians of the Future is where I do my other podcast, and we spent an hour and 45 minutes today doing the podcast. We were doing some lead up to the moves being announced, and then we anticipated like a 45-minute show to react to moves being announced, and the Guardians didn't put their moves out until like super late. And 30 seconds after we decided to call it quits for the night in the podcast, the Guardians announced their moves. So it got everything in there except for the Nolan Jones trade. But if you want to hear me talk even more about Carlos Vargas and Tim Herron and a surprise way we got a source on Tim Herron being added to the roster, go ahead and do that.
Was that through somebody's mom? Did I see that tweet?
Yes.
So yeah, that's
great sources.
Yeah. Go check that out. I mean, everyone's saying they enjoy the longer content. You can get even more content, and everyone gets annoyed with how I cut off Justin all the time. So you can get longer content without me. It's the best of all worlds. I'm just going to keep.
That's a lot of me. That's a lot of me. Be careful what you wish for.
Listen, all of the comments are only positive with you. If there's a negative one, it's on me. So everyone, you are golden, man.
Until today, this was it.
This is the one. This is where they're going to turn on you. You know, I think we've covered all of your bases. We're just having some fun vamping here at the end, but there's going to be so much more to do this entire offseason. We still haven't covered left field, or no, we did. We haven't covered center field. We haven't covered right field. We know that. At some point, I'm going to drag Justin into one of my dusty draft retrospectives. People always enjoy that. And we have our Brewers show. By the way, the Brewers show has generated, I got a DM from, I believe, a Mount Union football player with about 5 ideas. That was kind of fun. I should probably shout him out as maybe he doesn't want to be shouted out, but Nolan, thank you. Those are all great ideas. We will be using them on the show. And then I got a bunch on the channel here. Everyone's excited for the Brewers show. So if you have an idea for our Brewers themed episode, send them in, because I feel like we're probably going to do that maybe. Well, and we've got a guest host this week. We're going to do a crossover with Lindsay of Locked On Prospects. So it's going to be a full week, a lot of fun. Maybe like we do Brewers before Thanksgiving or something like that. That can be, something next week is a Monday, Tuesday early show. But yeah, thank you to everyone. Thank you to Justin for dealing with my ridiculousness on the regular. And remember to download daily, rate and review, subscribe. Check out Guardians of the Future for more fantastic coverage of the minors specifically, but I mean, just Guardians information in general. Anything else to throw in?
No, I'll save any leftover thoughts on the trades for tomorrow. We've gone long enough, so come back tomorrow. I do have a couple more thoughts on the trades today, but I'll save them for tomorrow.
That will be tomorrow. And again, thank you to everyone. Go subscribe on YouTube right now, and go subscribe all of your friends as well, or make like 6 burner accounts. Those are all things you could do to help the show. And how we end every show is go Guardians go.